All right, we're going to get started. I just wanted to, for a sound check, to ask Ralph Barnes if you can hear us on Zoom.
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, we can hear you as well. Thank you. We will start then our Board of County Commission meeting. And as always, we start with Pledge of Allegiance. I think we got those reversed. A prayer, reading, or thought, and the Pledge of Allegiance. And we're looking at the audience to see if there's anyone who would like to volunteer to do one or the other. Maybe the last chance this year. Any volunteers? Seeing, oh, I got two over here. Which ones? What do you want to do? Come on up. Thank you.
For Garfield. Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for all our many blessings. We thank Thee for the chance to gather in this beautiful building and fulfill our obligations as civic leaders to discuss and deliberate the affairs of the county. At this Christmas time, we ask that there will be increased goodwill and that we can look out for one another and care for those that need any special attention. And we ask that this meeting go well and that everything will be discussed in a positive way for the benefit of the county's citizens. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
If you're able, please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you for participating in that. Before we go into our meeting, I just want to say Merry Christmas to everybody, especially those that are here, and for our employees. I know that we have put together a little email letter that will go out to everybody, and hopefully it will hit soon. We all signed it, so it should go. We're just hoping that it goes.
Yes.
So to start with, we do have a public hearing, and this public hearing is to discuss amending the 2021 budget in the Utah County General Fund and various other budgetary funds. So if I could have a motion to open up that public hearing.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second that.
I got a motion and a second to open up the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are now open to hear from the public. Are there any comments? If there are comments, just come on up to the microphone, or if we see anything, Alice, on Zoom, if there looks like Ralph's the only one on there, raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, we'll need a motion to close the public
I'll
hearing.
make a motion to close this public hearing.
I'll second that motion.
We got a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're now closed from that public hearing. Now we'll move to building our agenda. You'll notice that our consent agenda is empty, and I would assume that we will attempt to fill it with items that we do not hold. If we hold an item, that means that we're going to leave it on a regular agenda to be discussed or and go through the process of voting on it. All other items will go to the consent agenda, meaning that we have looked at them individually and agreed to them separately, and there was no need for us to discuss them. So, number one, I know we need to hold that one for some discussion. How about 1 through 14? Any on there that we need to hold?
Number
I
8
was-
might need to be held to discuss.
Which one?
Number 8.
Yeah, I was going to say number 8.
Number 8.
That's what I had as well.
Okay. I'm wondering, since we had some conversations on 9, if we shouldn't hold that one just to make sure that we're clarifying it. And 22, if they go together somewhat, not necessarily, but somewhat together.
Item 14, you might want to table.
Item 14, 15, and 16, it's recommended that we table those.
I'm fine with that.
Yes.
Okay. Items 17 through 27. Again, if we could hold 22.
Twenty-seven. 27. And 18 and 19, those are grant funded for the public information.
There was some discussion. We received emails on
Yes.
27, 28, and 29. Do we need to hold those? Should we hold those or not?
And if you want, we can address those. Otherwise, I'm fine just leaving them on consent.
I know Chris Swenson did, I guess, the lion's share of the work over this. Chris Swenson within the clerk's department.
Yeah. Why don't we just hold them? We'll just
Okay.
hold them.
Okay.
Then 30 through 38.
I think 37, I still didn't see a schedule of fees on that one.
The request is continue 37.
Okay, let's continue
For
37 then.
2 weeks.
Continue.
Okay,
So January 3rd.
Okay. All right. And then 39 through 47. We'll need to table 47. Any others from 39 to 46? The only reason why I think we need to table 47 is because I think we need to go through our whole
Agenda
meetings
first.
and then have our closed meetings and then
decide.
decide.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, and then on our closed meetings, the only one that I have is
Litigation.
51.
Yep.
So if we can, on agenda, strike 48, 49, and 50, and leave it on consent that we approve and set a date, time, and location for a closed meeting for a strategy session, discuss the pending and reasonable imminent litigation. If that's okay, we'll just leave that on consent as an item that we will address.
Yeah, that works for me.
All right, Alice, can you
Okay.
run through those?
You bet. Okay, I have us holding regular agenda items number 1, 8, 9, and then tabling 14, 15, 16, holding 22, 27, 28, 29, and then we're continuing on consent number 37 to January 5th. And then as far as number 47 we're tabling. And then for closed meetings, we're striking 48, 49, 50, and holding as stated 51.
Perfect. That's what I have. Okay. So with that, then we'll move to our regular agenda, which is to approve and adopt the resolution amending the 2021 budget. This is to kind of go through, make sure everything's in line, and that we have things in its proper place. Rudy, if you'd like to kind of give us an overview of what you
Yeah.
put together here.
I mean, so this really is a technical exercise in what we're doing right now, because when we vote in a budget, we have appropriations that are governed, that by law we can't exceed those appropriations, and it's at the department level. So throughout the year, things change, and rather than making modifications throughout the year all the time to move some of these things around, we looked at the items that we believe need an adjustment to make sure that we're in strict compliance. And by doing this, we are not adding one penny of spendable budget to anybody's department, because we will not even record this journal entry for this amendment until January. So it's just a technical thing so that we're in the legal requirement.
Balancing the checkbook.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with that, Thank you for that. There is a couple of areas I'd like to consider with the commission. Like Rudy said, some of this is just making sure that we're taken care of as we move forward. In the line item first page, the 33350, we have in there $11 million. I would like to increase that to $11,400,000. And that's just so because this last year we got caught where we were looking at doing reclassifications and we didn't have enough. We just didn't put enough money in there. And so we had to kind of open up the budget to put more money in so that we could do it on an appropriate basis. And so with that 400,000 added in there, and of course, if it doesn't materialize to that, it doesn't.
Correct.
But if it does, then we're covered.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
I'm okay with that.
If we could do that. And then on 38100, same first page, if we could just add $115,000 into the year-end proposed, that account has, on the revenue side, is probably close to $300,000 in there, but there's an offset of 115. So I think the revenue and the expenses will be able to match a little better if we're okay with doing that.
Makes sense. For me.
And I talked with Rudy about
Yep.
all these before. Other than that, I don't have any other questions.
One note I would say is that by changing that grant amount on the first page, we were planning on transferring that overage into the capital project, the
Oh.
capital improvement fund.
Good
So
catch, yes.
that number would correspondingly change.
Exactly. Yep, exactly.
Were we able, we were able to get all the recapitalization done as well.
So that was, so we went through it with Peter Brown, and that's where this number, and then if you look back on
That's the adjustment. I meant the recapitalization for the health department was going to use their fund balance to do that. I'm
Correct.
talking about like the recapitalization on the computer
Reclassification?
equipment. Not the
Oh,
reclassification.
the recap,
Recapitalization,
okay.
correct.
So the reclass I saw,
Yeah.
but I'm talking about the recap.
So they would be using fund balance for that, and
Because
there was
I think we had some
200,000.
motor pool that
There
needed
was
to be recapped.
$200,000 coming from general fund into that, but there's sufficient funding in there to cover that
Okay,
one.
so I just want to make sure that all got done in the adjustment, the recap for both the IT equipment and for the motor pool.
We're not making an adjustment for those because they can be absorbed in what we have out there existing.
Okay,
Plenty of funds. Yep.
all right.
Any other questions, or?
Just one question I had, page 4, wildland fire for sheriff, that's 115,000. Was this inside the county? Because most of that is outside, that's federal state funds.
Yeah, we have both. I mean, we have the inside operations, which basically handle stuff in this general area, even though it may be outside of the city, the county proper. We're helping out with different things. And so then we have the other portion, which is funded by mutual aid revenue from the federal government or states or somewhere else. So, yeah, so they interact between the two of them, and
Right.
we should be covering our costs within the general fund from the wildland fire
Just our
operations.
projection was a little low then. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there were a few adjustments that came in there. Part of it was because of the salary study that was done during the year and a couple of other different things and benefits or, time-limited employees, a few different things like that.
Okay.
Because they did increase some of the wages for time-limited employees because we're having a hard time finding and retaining them at the wages we're starting them out at.
And the page 5 again, at 48,300 to 92, contribution fund balance, that's almost $5.3 million. That's reflecting as part of the tax reduction, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's not a tax reduction, it's actually a tax increase. We bumped sales taxes up to what we believe they are going to be
Okay.
for the year, and so that's completely reflected in that.
So it's more robust than we were anticipating a few months ago then? Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
This is in line with the numbers that we presented to the commission when we presented the tentative budget.
Okay.
That's a good note, though. Even with the reduction that we had this year, we're going to put more than $5.2 million into the fund balance. And then, of course, that money was always there. This $11 million, which was federal money, is going to the CIP, so they're not mixed. It's not,
Right.
they're,
Correct.
and I think that's important that we keep those as separate as possible. But even with that tax reduction, there's more than 5.2, and we still have to get through this year and see what's
Correct.
turned back. So that 5.2 could be on a low
And
side.
I was going to make that point. Thank you for bringing that up, because we won't know the exact number until we close out the books for 2021.
Right.
Because
Right.
what gets transferred over is not the budgeted amount. What gets transferred over, transferred rolls to fund balance is any revenues in excess of expenditures.
Right, and that won't happen until June, probably.
exactly.
Because we won't even have our payout for 3 months.
Correct.
Yeah, and it's also important to note that this is just more of the trend of really strong sales tax revenue.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which we saw in June, which we adjusted, which
Right.
was part of the,
Right.
okay.
Page 10, then, there's a $252 million. I believe that's ARPA, FEMA, and the Emergency Rental Act money, I believe. That's what that's reflecting that.
That's more than that, because we only received 62 million of the ARPA.
Right.
Plus CARES was only about 20 million, so that's 80 million, plus FEMA was like maybe 5 million. So we're still looking, that's less than 100 million. So that wouldn't quite make
Yeah,
sense.
so the budgeted revenues for those, when we received the grant approval, we recorded those in that
Unassigned.
unassigned grant revenue. And as we actually receive the revenues in and we have the expenditures programmed, then we move that money out of there and into the operating area.
So it would be all grants, not just those ones. That would
That
make
is
more
correct.
sense.
So
all
it's more than
grants.
just those three then?
That's correct.
Okay,
It's
I
all
want to get that
grants.
clear, okay.
Yeah,
So
it would
it's-
have to be at that amount.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times we know we're going to be applying for a grant. We don't know whether we'll get it or not, or
We still put it in there.
we put it in there
Right,
because we
that
know
makes
we will
sense.
get some.
All right, any other questions?
I think
I do want
hotels,
to point out one which jumped out, but if you look on page 8, it talks about the proceeds from the insurance of bonds. There's $42 million in there, and there's also an offset on the expenses of 42.
Right.
But that's just us washing it through, because we reissued bonds, and so it just washes through, and we got better deals into the future.
Yep.
But this is, I mean, you see big numbers like that, and
Yeah.
there's usually an explanation why.
It's governmental accounting.
Right.
I mean, it's government accounting. We have to show the revenues and we have to show the proceeds. So we issued bonds to refund the old bonds, got money coming in, pay off the old ones, and that's it. You're exactly
New
right,
ones.
Commissioner.
And I mean, we've been doing a really good job on our bonds, taking advantage of every opportunity there to refinance them.
Yeah,
better.
with the interest rates that we can get in the market right now, it's silly not to go through that. Even though there are costs in issuing them, it's a better deal for the county for sure.
Absolutely.
The one last thing that I don't know if we wanted to bring up and mention, this does include adding a new fund at the end, Fund 3.
I
what
think
number
that
did we
it's
give
really
it?
good to bring that up, because this is 690?
Yes.
The 690.
And the reason we're doing that is that's 100% the result of a change in accounting methodology that's been imposed upon us by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. And so certain expenses that we were holding in a liability account or a trust account cannot be done that way now. So we have to have a separate fund for that purpose. And that's why we have to add this. It's no change in what we've actually been doing. In fact, in some ways, it's good, because then we can put risk stuff in here that we were anticipating and make sure those balances are where we believe they should be.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, this does not, it doesn't on a monetary basis affect the general, our general fund either way, positive or negative.
Yeah, it's
more of
exact. I
just
mean,
an
it's
accounting.
business as usual. It's just
Right.
moving from a different type of account into here because of accounting
set
standards.
aside funds.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
I Don't have any others.
I don't.
Okay, a motion then?
Make a motion that we approve and adopt the resolution amending the 2021 budget, Agenda 1.
I will second that motion.
We got a motion and a second to approve and adopt the resolution as stated in number 1 with some of the changes that we talked about. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0. Okay. Okay, number 8 is to adopt a resolution enacting Part 3, Subpart 3-304, Utah County Events and Entertainment. And I think, yeah, come on up here. Robert, you're going to speak to this one.
Commissioners, while Robert's coming up, can I just address an item on item number 5? That was on consent, but it does need to have the dates corrected. Everywhere it has 2021, it needs to be changed to 2022. So if we could make that.
How about if we just hold that, Dave?
Okay.
And we'll address it first. So we can just hold it and do it.
Yeah, let's do
So
that.
let's address, stay right there. Is there a motion for?
I'll
number
make a
5?
motion to approve number 5 with the adjustment of changing the dates to 2022 rather than 2021.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second to approve and authorize number 5 on our agenda with the date changes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0. Thank you. Now we'll move to adopting the resolution on number 8.
Wait, Robert?
Okay, Robert Baxter, Purchasing. There were just a couple of concerns I had about the wording of it. I didn't feel like it was quite ready to go forward. I was just speaking with Court a couple of minutes ago. We were thinking that the second paragraph could probably be eliminated, that it's just confusing and probably not necessary. I also think it probably fits better in Part 5 rather than in Part 3 of the purchasing rules. I guess the bottom line, I don't think this is really ready to go forward yet. I think I'd like to have a little more discussion on it, make sure we've got it right and make sure it's clear before we go forward with amending.
Is there any reason that it needs to be done in this fiscal year, or is January just fine? You don't see anything?
There's no, from my perspective, there's no reason to do it. It doesn't matter when it's done. It's just a question of, I know that they want to get moving with things for the fair and such. I don't know what the time frame is for that, but as far as I'm concerned, I see no reason not to wait until January to do this.
Okay, that works for you, Dave?
So
Okay.
while we're here looking at it though, as we're looking at the revisions, a couple of concerns that I have is one, that is this going to be specific? Do we have language in here to be very specific to what it's, are we opening it up to the county? And maybe that's part of the concerns that you have, I'm not sure, but that's a concern of mine. If we're going to specifically tie this to something, otherwise it can creep. Creep meaning it can
Right.
expand. Not in Halloween, we're in Christmas.
I was following you.
Well,
Go ahead.
Well, we sort of intentionally wanted to open it so that it wasn't just specifically for the fair. I mean, I don't know that it would apply to many other things, but we want it to be, if we're going to make an exemption, it should be an exemption based on the type of activity rather than the specific activity. We didn't want it to be, a fair exclusion or a commission exclusion. We wanted it to be some, this type of activity would be eligible for an exemption. So that's what we were looking for. But I do think that we could benefit from some definitions in it, because it lists a lot. It says selection of entertainment, attractions, booth vendors, and sponsors. That maybe we could clarify a little bit more specifically what we mean by those, so it doesn't cause confusion in the future.
Okay. And I'm not sure if I fully agree with the countywide view of that, but nevertheless, looking at it, there's got to be a way that if we have an exclusion, that we can go through a ratification process, that there's going to be a majority of the commission, that there's some place, because what I don't necessarily want is I want a one person making a decision, based on something that's out there that doesn't come back and tie all the way through.
This doesn't apply to contracts. This is just to the competitive process.
Well, I know, but that's part of it. So if we eliminate competitive process, somebody's making the decision that we don't have to go through that.
That's true. If we include this as part of the Part 5 exemptions, that's where we have, the exemptions for care of inmates or purchase of election equipment, that sort of thing. Even in those, none of those are automatic. I'm still supposed to approve those on a case-by-case basis. It's just that we don't have to jump through any special hoops to do that. For example, care of inmates, I simply just approve whether or not that applies to that exemption or not. So in this case, what I've suggested it be under that same part, that it's eligible for exemption, but I would still need to approve it. Now, if you're talking about beyond that, who makes the decisions on what goes to competitive bid or not, then I don't know.
Yeah, okay. I don't mind having more discussion on it. I think there are some, I'd like to work down through. I would like to find ways for it to work, because I know that the fair specifically it's not been problematic, but it's been moved around to different parts to avoid or to go through different processes, let's put it that way. And that's where this kind of jumps out, is that, fairs, sometimes these issues have to be done quickly and they can't wait weeks or go through procedures. But then on the other hand, for government, that's the safeguard too, of going through it. So I don't want to step on one side or the other. I want to be able to equally balance it and find a place that works.
Well, I think the reasoning behind this, at least my understanding, is part of it is just the nature of these types of purchases, entertainment and such. They don't really lend themselves well to competition. I mean, if you want to get entertainment, you want a specific entertainer, not just a generic entertainer. That's sort of the type of purchasing that we'd be making. Yeah. Court, did you have
has a
anything?
couple.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe I could just get my nickel's worth in here while I can. This is meant to be a very narrow exception and, tailored to the fair. But, Robert thought it should be a little broader, and so we revised it that way in prior discussions. But So what we would like to do, the oversight is basically what the commission is concerned about. And while it's not applicable to source selection, all of the other oversight applies. If it's below, is it 2,500 or 5,000, a PO is going to be required, and that's going to require the sign off of two commissioners. If it's over 5,000, we're going to have a contract or whatever the limit is, and that's going to come before the commission. And Robert's going to have, or the purchasing agent is also at that point going to have oversight and can raise any concerns. And so one thing that I thought, I don't know if it would help, is to specify, I'm fine with eliminating subsection 2. That was proposed based on an erroneous assumption of my part that the source of the funds might be relevant to whether or not there was source selection requirements. But it could be even narrowed further to clarify that it's for Utah County government events, so it could be even more tight. But, for the fair, they're going to be working under a budget, and so they'll be constrained by whatever the fair budget is. And then once the provider has been selected, it's still subject to purchase order and or contract formation oversight before it's finalized. So, I don't know, are there any other questions? But I think the oversight is there.
The only, one of the things that I thought of, and Commissioner Lee, I'd like your thoughts on this. If it's all of the events this would apply, for example, to the entertainment for the employee appreciation lunch, right? So that's not necessarily in need of a bid. So I can see a need there, but I agree this should be very tightly tailored. We have purchasing rules for a reason, right? And if we're going to open it up for exceptions, I think they need to be well thought out. We need to look at the language very carefully, especially because that goes into policy. So I agree.
And that's one of the reasons why I like it very narrow, because it gives us an opportunity to actually experiment on that a little bit and see how that works. And if it turns out it doesn't work, then we haven't affected everything. We've just affected one little narrow area. And if it works great, then maybe we could look at it, expanding it out. But because we do see, some problems when it comes to the fair, and it's not really problems, just hurdles that are sometimes hard to overcome in the middle of trying to run a fair, and things happen really quick. So we just want to make sure.
Yeah, and it's meant to help out the volunteers who are putting in a lot of time and not getting compensated for it, to help them run the fair in a smooth and efficient manner, and with oversight, because the agreements are not going to go through without at least 2 commissioners approving it at one point or another. So appreciate that.
Okay. Well, it sounds like we have some work to do on it.
Yeah, so let's continue this, till?
We do have, I just got handed a note before we actually vote on it. There was a comment. I don't know if it's a comment for this agenda item, or is this a hand raised for public comment at the end, or I'm just not sure. I don't know if you can type back or just open it up.
Yeah, Heather Thomas, if, are you wanting to comment on this one? You're allowed. You've been unmuted if you want to go ahead and speak.
Oh, well, I didn't raise my hand, so I'm not entirely sure what value I have to add to this question, but it's interesting to listen to the debate and the whys.
Okay. Well, this one we'll move on. It looked like the hand was raised on that, so I just wanted to address that. Okay, is there a motion then?
So if we continue this, in order to make sure everyone's talking, is January 3rd too soon? Do we need to push it a week beyond that?
It might be a good idea to wait a little longer. I don't know how many of us will be able to get together between now and then.
So a week from January 3rd to January 10th, perhaps? 12th, excuse me. Okay, so I'll make a motion that we continue agenda number 8 until January 12th.
Okay, I'll second that motion.
A motion and a second to continue item number 8 till January 12th. All in favor, say aye.
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 Just for clarification, could you add to that the requirement that Mr. Griffin appear at that meeting? That would be a benefit.
Well, I think you have the ability to order him, right?
Like send them a
Okay.
subpoena
Good
or
luck on
something.
that.
I think the commission does have subpoena power that we can direct the sheriff to grab them.
Yeah.
Good luck on that. You have to get him from Hawaii. All right. Number 9, and then if it's all right with the commission, if we could kind of bring number 9 and number 22 together.
Yeah.
Then, because I know we talked about them last time together, and there was some workings, to work through this to make sure it all worked out. So Ralph, go
Yes.
ahead and.
Yes, Ralph Barnes, HR. So in summary, we updated the verbiage to indicate that the deputies would be employed by the county for these, contract assignments. They would not be employed by the, third party. That was the most important, clarification because of the, governmental immunity issues and liability issues. We wanted to make sure that was clear. These hours will count towards hours worked with the county, and that really is the substance of the changes to the policy. Other than that, everything else is the same.
Okay.
Okay, Sheriff's good with that? Okay.
And they will, if they do go into overtime, we will be paying overtime.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just for clarification on item 22, the latest version of that document was just uploaded like an hour ago, I think. The only change to the prior one is just some clarification along the same lines that Ralph has just described, so that they're not, it's clear that they're not the employee of this third party.
Okay.
Right. And then also on number 22, is it assumed, Ralph, that if there's a change to, we're using the sergeant level as the base rate? Primarily, I know there's supervisors and stuff in there, but primarily, that if there's a change to their increase in pay, that it automatically hits this one as well as an increase. Is that understood, or is that?
Yes, it is understood. It's not explicitly in the people policy or the HR policy, but it is expressly understood that would be the case. Yeah,
I just assumed it would be, but.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question, and that's conversation we've had.
So this next year, whatever the rate is now, this next year, if you go through and you say, the sergeants or go up in their pay to X amount, then it will automatically trigger into this as
Yes.
well as an increase.
Yep,
Okay,
that is correct.
fantastic. Okay, I think we made it through that one.
All right.
Make a motion on both items then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Make a motion that we adopt agenda 9 and number 22.
I'll second that motion.
I got a motion and a second to adopt the resolution in number 9 and also approve the authorization in 22. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 3-0 on both those. Okay. Tabled. Number 27. So the issues with 27, 28, and 29 are all the same. And I thought it'd probably be best to address it in an open meeting. I did have a conversation with Roseanne this morning, talking about it. And of course, I know the procedure from the past with Dave. Just for note, when I came in as a commissioner, and the law hasn't changed since I came in as a commissioner, but when I came in as a commissioner, we never put any backup documents on our agendas. And we went through this process. And as you saw during our process, often we will modify and change documents, which doesn't necessarily trigger that we go to another commission meeting, just because we're modifying or changing documents. We put these on the documents fully on here as much as possible, unless they're protected for some reason or another, out of courtesy to the citizens and to everyone, so they can see them on a transparency basis. But nevertheless, there was some questions raised about there not being documents in the full 24-hour notice beforehand. And so I wanted to have that conversation on if there's some concern. If there's some public concern, I'd sure love to hear it if they want to talk, but I'd like to talk with the commissioners too.
Yeah, and I would also maybe, Josh, maybe you could give us an overview of this process and why the timing is the way the timing is. I think that's also helpful as well.
Yep.
If you don't mind.
So commissioners, as you well know, many in the Utah political sphere have a favorite pastime, and it's criticizing the federal government. So now is a great time for us to engage in that time-honored tradition. The United States Census Bureau did not deliver the required census data for redistricting until 6 months after their typical timeline. So states all across the country had to turn around redistricting processes to redraw local and statewide and federal districts and then now local precincts on a much abbreviated timeline. So we can all thank Uncle Sam for the delay. Uncle Sam will blame some national emergency and pandemic for the delay. But certainly we have great people in Utah and in Utah County who continue to do their job and deliver great public service. We had a lot of people in our office, and Kristen Swenson led them all to get these precinct boundaries drawn on a very, very abbreviated timeline. But getting them done by the end of the year is typical. The code requires you to adopt precincts generally if you're going to make changes by the end of the year. With redistricting, you can get a little bit of extra time if you need it. But the reason it's important that we get these districts out is so that political parties and others are able to now know what those boundaries look like. If there are some adjustments or some sort of, errors or something like that need to be corrected, we do have a little bit more time, but I think it's important that you move forward with these right now. But that's the legislative body of the county is the one that will adopt district boundaries for school board districts in the event that a school district crosses municipal boundaries, which is the case with Nebo and Alpine. So that's why you'll be approving those new districts there. There's some new sections of code for what they call voter participation areas, which now have to be adopted by the county as well. And so that's another one of the items there. And then, of course, you have the precincts across the county.
How many precincts did we have previously, and how many will we have moving forward?
So previously there were 300 plus, and now there'll be about 400 plus. So it's about a 25% increase to precincts, which we're using the same population or registered voter cap, if you will, on the precincts, which is unfortunate. The legislature had contemplated changing that. I think they should have. They didn't get to it in time. Maybe they'll do that in the future. So yeah, there's more precincts. And so, some of those are kind of arbitrary in the sense that you don't necessarily have to have a cap, because where we send ballots out by mail, you're not worrying about a certain amount of people attending a particular polling location, which is traditionally why they capped them. So you'll see more precincts on a district by district basis. Of course, population growth has been significant. Utah County's gained, a couple of House seats or portions of House seats and portions of Senate seats.
Okay. Thank you for that overview. I think it's been a Herculean effort. I mean, for us to have received this information 6 months late from the federal government, we couldn't even start drawing precincts until the state developed their lines, which was in November, which gave us less than 2 months to completely redo every precinct because we moved from like 300 to over 400. So, I think they did a great effort. We've actually received emails from the school districts giving our office kudos on how well that they worked with the school districts and included them in the process. But really, this wasn't a matter of tweaking like it has been maybe in censuses past, since I passed. I'm not sure what the plural of census is. But it's been a complete redrawing. And Commissioner Lee, I know you noted that the change in your precinct, which shows that they've worked really well to try to include communities and not just numbers. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I was just going to give the same kudos to Chris and her team. This is remarkable work out of the clerk's department and a short window they had to do this. So it's remarkable they got it done as quickly as they did. They probably need another couple of months in reality, but statutorily we have to get it done this year.
So I'm going to ask the question, Josh, and that is there any advantage to waiting a week so that people can see these maps over just passing it today?
Continue it for 1
Or
week.
continuing it for a week. I mean, one of the big one is that we were hoping to get everything done today, but I don't think that's necessarily an excuse, for making sure that the public comes along with us. It's just a question that is being raised since they haven't had a chance to look at it. Is there a chance for input that would change anything materially?
No, I don't think anything materially would change, because really the precincts make a lot of sense. They're even though they're sort of arbitrary, it's like you have to have about 1250. You have to have the same districts. And so you look at an area and the precincts almost draw themselves. And then you just pick some, major lines and roads and different things. This sooner than later is better because in this event, the next step is, in January, you'll start to have candidates who will want to do, like, let's say, petitioning for signatures for running for office. We need to have precinct designations made so that as they go and collect those signatures, they can have their packets and all the precinct designations can be made. So that's important. There's a cascade of additional work that has to be done once you've set the precincts. The other thing is that the city of Provo will set the districts for the Provo School District. And so they need to know the precincts so that they can then pick which precincts go with which board member district. So
They can't do that until we set the precincts.
Right. And so I don't know that delaying really makes any sense. If there was a major problem that was brought to our attention, we would have time to amend or change it if needed. I really don't envision there being any real substantive issues or problems or changes that would be required.
Yeah, very good.
I wonder if to help the public be more aware of the change, should we get a button or a hyperlink on the main page counting?
We're working on that as we speak.
Say, something that says precincts have been changed, take a look here.
Yep. We have an interactive map online, and GIS is working to get that link to where it's not a link to your ability to edit them, but a link to view them. So I don't want to share that link right now. I don't want 600,000 redistrictors.
If that could be on the main page, that way, as soon as they go to utahcounty.gov, it opens up and there it sticks right out, and they hit that and it takes them directly to the page.
Yep, we're working on getting a link like that.
Okay, thank you.
Roseanne Mitchell, Election Director. So one thing to add to that is it will cause a lot of confusion if we have a precinct link there for them to look at. But if they go to vote.utah.gov to look up their precinct there, it's going to show their old precinct and not their new precinct. So it shows their old representatives. So we need the precincts finalized so we can get those into the statewide voter registration database so that everything matches up. And like Josh pointed out, the candidates coming in beginning as early as January 3rd, we can't print their packets until we have that information in our voter system. And that's a couple weeks of work.
Yeah, so that would be another thing that put it, when you open up that hyperlink, whatever that might be, they can have a little banner to emphasize what Roseanne just said, basically, don't go with this because it's all changed.
Yeah, but we can, if we adopt these, the sooner we adopt these, the sooner we can get it into the state system and the sooner everything can start to mesh.
Yep.
Yeah, I think
Correct.
those are excellent points, especially given the time frame we have and also the opportunity for others who are possibly looking at running for office. They have the ability to start looking at where things are at. I think those are critical too. So if it's all right, if there are any major concerns, I think we would be welcome to hear them. But if there's any public comment to this in which they've got some major concern, we'd like to hear it. And if there's anyone in the audience or anybody online that would like to address that. Any hands that are raised that you can see, Alice? No? See a hand there? Oh, wait, that's just... I was just kidding. Okay.
I'll make a motion that we adopt agenda item 27, 28, and 29.
I will second that motion.
I got a motion and a second to adopt 28, 27, 28, and 29. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those pass 3-0.
Thanks, Josh. That'll help a lot.
Okay. Yes, thank you. All right. We continue 37. And we tabled 47. We're at the end, aren't we? Okay.
Just the one closed session, and then we need to,
Yeah, I don't have any, no work sessions.
nope.
Is there any general public comment?
I think there is. I received a note that there was going to be.
Any hands up? Okay, go ahead and open up that one then.
Okay, Robert Stevens, if you'd like to go ahead and unmute and proceed.
Okay, Robert, you've got 3
Okay.
minutes.
How long?
3 minutes.
Okay. Okay, number one. Suppose you dig a well and it dries up, and you find out the reason why is because your neighbors are using more well water than they need. I'm concerned that even though Utah remains in an extreme drought, in the county, to get subdivision approval, you must have 6 times more water than is required. You only need to have 0.45 acre feet for a well or for the house, and 1 acre feet for landscaping, but yet in a 5 1/4 acre lot, you need 8.98 acre feet. So I'd like you to go look into that and see if it's really necessary for us to have way more water or 6 times more water than we need. Secondly, to get subdivision approval, you have to have your water tested. If there's an issue which is discovered where there's a contaminate, which is even 1 part per a million or a billion more than what is allowed, you have to install a whole house filtration system. So then the unforeseen repercussion is to avoid that. If you dig a well, you'll run your water for anywhere between like 3 days and 2 weeks, so you can avoid having an issue with your water. And in some situations, I've seen a test happen without running the water long, and it has an issue. And then after they just go run the water for a week or 2 and spill out the equivalent of a swimming pool of water on their land, and wasting all that, they'll go and test the water again, and it's fine. So I think that our regulations need to be revisited, so a person who's trying to get subdivision approval is not motivated to go spill out a swimming pool of water or more on their property just to meet on the requirements and to avoid having to install an expensive whole house filtration system. Number 3, you can use a distiller to go purify your water. You can have one on the counter in your kitchen, or you can have one, near your hot water heater, and the water's pure. But yet in the county, a distiller is not allowed. I've tried to read through your notes of your previous meetings, and I haven't found anything which has discussed the use of a distiller, and I think it should be allowed. And that's all I have right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more. Come on up. Oh, the time's up.
Commissioners, Jeremy Walker, the Director of Financial Services. Want to wish you a Merry Christmas. Hope you're able to take some time off and re-energize going into a new year. I just wanted to, since it sounds like there will not be another meeting before the end of this year, to suggest or recommend just an acknowledgement that the Commission has been presented with the annual fraud risk assessment. This assessment was performed by the Internal Audit Division. They were not able to be here for a couple different reasons, so I just wanted to make sure you had a copy, and though it's not a formal agenda item, if informally it could be acknowledged that it's been presented having been completed by the Internal Audit Division. This will, I believe, get us to be in compliance with the state auditor's request. It's just a matter of acknowledging it, I believe.
I acknowledge receipt. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sure we'll have further discussion on this. I know Dave and I were talking about it.
So
we'll have to walk down through it.
yeah, I mean, some background. It's kind of a newer tool that the state auditor's office uses for local government to basically, it's like a checklist of like, how do you avoid the risk of fraud, right? And so I think this is the second year that it's been in effect. And so we did this last year and had, I think, about the same score. We're in the low risk category, which is good. Basically, you know, we're meeting most of these checklist items. There's a few more that we'd like to see the county get to, and we've made some progress, I think, towards some of those. So audit committee is one of them, and then there's training, some training requirements, and like an acknowledgement statement. We've worked with HR to actually get something like that in Relias. So there's a few items of improvement, but generally it's good. Generally, we're checking all the boxes recommended by the state auditor's office. And so this is something we do on an annual basis and report back to the state auditor's office. It's really more for our purpose. It's not so much that the state auditor requires it. I mean, they do, but it's really for our benefit to see a checklist of things that would say, how do we make sure that as a county we have a low risk of fraud? And if you check all the items on this list, well, that's a good thing, and we're in a good spot.
So I see that there's just 3 items that aren't checked.
Right. Yep. And a couple of those you can look at. There's a few that, for example, there's some great online training on the state auditor's website, which I highly recommend. Those who it's applicable to, go ahead and do that once every 4 years. It's just some online videos. And there's a few other items. So there's room for improvement, but we're in a very good spot, I would say. There's no problems or issues.
So by presenting this qualifies this.
Right. That meets the box.
Okay.
Yep.
So it doesn't have to go on a future commission?
Nope.
Okay, because there was an email saying that it had to go on a future commission agenda. So okay, good.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, any other public comment?
Thank you, Jeremy.
All right,
Okay, so
Thank
we'll
you.
go into closed session.
we'll go into closed session. Good luck to you, court.
Don't forget, Court, you'll probably hear a knock on your door in another week or so.
Goodbye.
So this.